The first officer on the scene described it later as the kind of silence that swallows sound. It was 2:47 a.m. when the call came in. A domestic disturbance on Willow Lane, a quiet street lined with manicured hedges and houses that all looked the same. But this one, number 47, was different tonight. Its front door stood slightly ajar, a single porch light flickering weakly against the rain. Inside, the air felt thick, stale, humid, and heavy with something metallic. The faint hum of the refrigerator was the only thing that broke the stillness. A wine glass had rolled onto the floor, resting on its side. The liquid inside long since spilled into a dark smear that led toward the kitchen. Detective Harper Lane stepped in first, her hand hovering near her holster, eyes sweeping across the mess. No forced entry. No sign of a struggle beyond the broken glass and overturned chair. But something about the quiet gnawed at her instincts. Then she saw her. Elena Ward sat on the tiled floor, barefoot and motionless. Her hair clung to her cheeks, matted with sweat. Both hands were slick with blood, not dripping but stained, dried into her skin like she'd been sitting there for hours. Her eyes were fixed on the sink, unblinking. Harper knelt a few feet away. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Elena turned her head slowly, the motion mechanical. Her voice cracked, a whisper more than a word. "He made me do it." The phrase hung in the air, fragile and unreal. Another officer, Ramos, moved behind Harper, scanning the room. "We've got signs of struggle here. Broken plate, blood trail." He followed it with his flashlight until it vanished at the hallway threshold. Harper's radio crackled. "Dispatch, we've got one female conscious, possible shock. Requesting medical?" Elena's breathing was shallow, almost rhythmic. She didn't resist when Harper gently touched her arm, though her gaze never left the empty space before her. "Who made you do it, Elena?" Harper asked quietly. Her lips trembled. "Daniel. Your husband?" A pause. Then a faint nod. The camera crews would later replay this exact moment in the documentary, freeze-framing Elena's blank stare, the close-up of her blood-stained fingers, the officer's hand on her shoulder. The narrator's voice would describe it as the moment when a loving wife became the prime suspect. But in that instant, Harper only felt unease. The way the house felt watched, the way the refrigerator buzzed too loudly, drowning the silence like it was trying to hide something. "Where's Daniel now?" Elena blinked. "He's here." Ramos froze. "What does she mean here?" Elena's eyes darted to the ceiling, then the floor. She leaned forward, voice cracking with sudden urgency. "He's still in the house. But he's not himself anymore," thunder rumbled outside. Harper motioned for backup to clear the rooms. The officers moved carefully, guns drawn, sweeping through the hallway, the living room, the upstairs bedroom. Nothing, until one of them called out, "Detective, you need to see this." Harper left Elena with Ramos and followed the voice into the hallway. The blood trail had resumed, faint smeared, leading to a closed door near the basement steps. The wood was cracked near the handle, as if forced shut. She pressed her ear against it. Silence. Then, a drip. "Steady, rhythmic, ma'am," Ramos called from the kitchen. "Paramedics are on their way." Harper hesitated, staring at the door, before turning back toward the kitchen. Elena was now standing unsteady, her eyes locked on the same door. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't open it, please." The detective's flashlight beam trembled slightly as she stepped closer. Outside, the sirens grew louder, slicing through the rain. Inside, the house seemed to hold its breath. Then Harper's hand closed on the doorknob, and that's when the smell hit her. The smell from behind that basement door would stay in Detective Harper's memory for years. But long before the blood, the silence, and the screams, there was laughter. The kind of laughter that made strangers think the Wards were a couple built on love. 5 years earlier, Elena Reeves had met Daniel Ward at an art exhibition downtown. He was magnetic, all calm smiles and thoughtful pauses, an architect who spoke about structures as if they had souls. He told her, "A home isn't about walls, it's about trust." At the time, Elena believed him. They married a year later in a small ceremony overlooking the coast. The photos still circulate in the documentary. Daniel in a navy suit, Elena in lace, her hand resting on his chest, both glowing with that kind of effortless perfection that doesn't last. In the first few months, Daniel would cook for her, leave handwritten notes by her coffee, buy her flowers when she felt low. He was attentive, almost too much. He'd say, "I just want to take care of you. Tina, no one's ever done that right." And she'd smile, grateful for the intensity, not realizing it was already the start of something darker. It began with small things. He asked why she needed to meet her friends so often, why she still talked to her brother about their marriage. Then his tone changed, calm but firm. "You don't need them. They'll just fill your head with nonsense." At first, she laughed it off. Then, she stopped going out as much. By their second anniversary, the house on Willow Lane had become both her sanctuary and her prison. The walls were pristine, the furniture elegant, Daniel's design. Every room felt carefully placed, symmetrical, flawless. He used to say symmetry was comforting. Elena began to see it as suffocating. When friends called, he'd answer the phone first. When she dressed up, he'd ask, "Who are you trying to impress?" When she cried, he'd hold her, but too tightly, whispering that no one would ever love her the way he did. Narration intercuts in the documentary with voiceovers of domestic psychologists. Control rarely begins with violence. It begins with dependency. Emotional, then physical, then total. One night, Elena came home to find Daniel sitting in the dark, the TV on static. She flipped on the light. "You scared me." He looked up slowly. "You didn't answer your phone." "I was at the store, 3 hours at the store." His voice was calm, too calm. She held up a bag of groceries like proof of innocence. "I lost track of time." He smiled then, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You always lose track of time when you're not with me." That night, he made her dinner and apologized. He kissed her forehead, told her he was just worried. But as he held her hand, she noticed faint bruises on her wrist, his thumbprints from when he'd grabbed her earlier. Over the next months, Daniel began working longer hours, or so he said. He'd come home past midnight, the smell of cologne that wasn't his clinging to his shirt. Elena asked once. He said, "If you trusted me, you wouldn't have to ask." Her journals from that period, later found by detectives, and were filled with fragmented sentences. "He's changing. I'm scared of silence. Sometimes. I think he watches me when I sleep." Still, she stayed. Love makes people rewrite their own horror stories. By the 3rd year, Daniel had renovated the entire house, every inch under his supervision. There were rooms Elena wasn't allowed to enter. He said they were unfinished. She tried to believe him. She tried to love him through the unease, until one night while dusting the hallway, she noticed a hairline crack on a glass-framed photograph of their wedding day. Daniel's face split perfectly down the middle by the fracture. It caught the light in a strange way, glinting like a warning. That was the first time she thought, maybe the walls in this house see more than I do. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked, restless and sharp, a sound that would echo in the background of many nights to come. And inside, Daniel's study door clicked shut. The night Daniel's study door clicked shut, the house across the street stirred. Margaret Kent, a widow in her 60s, had lived on Willow Lane for 30 years, long enough to recognize when a house began keeping secrets. From her front porch, she used to wave at Elena every morning. The young woman always waved back, smiling politely, sometimes carrying a basket of flowers or groceries. But over the years, Mrs. Kent noticed the changes. Small at first, like the fading brightness in Elena's eyes, or the way she flinched when Daniel called her name from the car. "Such a sweet couple," she told the documentary crew later, sitting in her tidy living room, the blinds half drawn. But sweetness can be rehearsed, can't it? She remembered their anniversary barbecue 2 summers ago. Music, laughter, clinking glasses. Daniel grilling steaks, charming everyone. Elena moving quietly behind him, serving drinks, avoiding eye contact. When she dropped a glass that night, Daniel's smile faltered for just a second. His jaw tightened. He leaned close, whispering something that made her face go pale. The next morning, Mrs. Kent saw Elena outside hanging laundry. Her sleeve slipped just enough to reveal bruises on her wrist. Faint, ring-shaped marks, like someone had gripped too hard. Mrs. Kent told herself she must have imagined it. People fall. Accidents happen. That's what nice neighborhoods are built to believe. Still, the sounds from the ward house grew harder to ignore. Muffled arguments that rose and died quickly. The slam of a door, the sharp crack of something breaking. Sometimes it was followed by silence so complete it made Mrs. Kent's heart race. One night in late autumn, she woke to what she thought was a woman crying. It was faint, distant, almost drowned by the wind. She opened her window, peered through the dark. But the ward house sat still, one upstairs light glowing dimly behind drawn curtains. In the documentary's reenactment, the camera pans to that same window, soft yellow light trembling through the storm. And the narrator says, "To the world, they were a perfect couple. To their neighbor, they were ghosts rehearsing love behind closed doors." Mrs. Kent started keeping notes in a small spiral pad. Times, sounds, small observations. 11 a.m. it's shouting, then silence. 11:30 p.m. crash. Morning, Elena watering plants, wearing sunglasses. She never showed the notes to anyone. She wasn't sure what they meant. But later, those same scribbles would become crucial evidence. Proof that the house had been a stage long before the crime. A few months before the night of the screams, Elena knocked on Mrs. Kent's door. It was raining hard. Her smile was brittle. "Sorry to bother you," she said softly. "Do you have any sugar?" Mrs. Kent nodded, went inside to fetch it. When she returned, Elena was gone. The front gate swinging open. Sugar bowl untouched. It was the last time she saw her alive. When the police came that night, lights flashing red and blue across the quiet street. Mrs. Kent stood behind her curtain, trembling. She told investigators later, "I always thought I'd hear him hurt her. I didn't think I'd hear her scream back. Now." The documentary cuts to a slow zoom on the ward house. Blinds drawn, porch light still flickering. And as Mrs. Kent's voice fades, the narrator says quietly, "Behind that locked study door, something far worse than bruises was waiting." The camera lingers on the darkened window, the one that always stayed lit until dawn. The rain had not stopped for 3 days. It came down in sheets, tapping against the windows of Willow Lane like impatient fingers. The neighborhood slept, but inside the ward house the storm was louder and closer. Daniel hadn't spoken much all week. He came home later than usual, avoided dinner, and disappeared straight into his study, the one room Elena was never allowed to enter. "It's for work," he'd said months ago when he first installed the lock. "Blueprints, confidential clients, you wouldn't understand." At first, she hadn't questioned it. But lately, the sound from behind that door wasn't the scratch of pencils or the shuffle of papers. Sometimes it was whispers, sometimes laughter. Once, a thud so loud it made the floor tremble. That night, as thunder rolled outside, Elena watched Daniel pace in front of the study door, phone in hand. His voice was sharp, unfamiliar. "Don't call here again," he hissed. "Do you hear me? Not this number." When he noticed her standing in the hallway, he hung up. His smile returned, but it was thin, fragile, like glass ready to crack. "Just work stuff," he muttered. "Go to bed, Lena." She hesitated. "You're shaking." I said go to bed. His voice had an edge she didn't recognize. He turned the lock with a loud click, the kind that sounded final. The house fell into silence except for the hum of the refrigerator and the steady beat of rain. Elena lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling. From somewhere below, a faint scraping sound came and went. Slow, deliberate, like something being dragged. In the documentary's reenactment, this moment is shot from above, a dim hallway, a closed door, a single bulb flickering overhead. The narrator's voice says softly, that was the first night she realized the door wasn't meant to keep her out. It was meant to keep something in. When Elena woke the next morning, Daniel was already gone. His study remained locked. The smell of metal and something sour hung faintly in the air. She reached for the doorknob and froze. Blood, just a small smear near the base of the handle. Her breath hitched. She pressed her fingers to it. It was dry, dark, and real. When Daniel returned that evening, she confronted him. "There was blood on your door." He laughed too quickly. "Cut myself, that's all." "On the door?" "Don't start, Elena, you overthink everything." He brushed past her, kissed her cheek mechanically, and added under his breath, "You make problems where there are none." Later, in her journal, she wrote, "He's lying again. I can feel it. Something is wrong in that room. I think he's hiding someone." From that day on, she started documenting everything. Times, words, expressions. The journal became her lifeline, her private confession. Each page bled fear. She noticed how Daniel locked his phone now, changed passwords weekly, and double-checked the basement door every night. Sometimes, she heard him whisper a name in his sleep, Rachel. When she asked who Rachel was, he smiled without warmth. "A client," he said. But the next day, the name Rachel was scrawled in her journal's margin, not in her handwriting. Elena began to sense the house itself watching her. The shadows stretched longer. The hum of the fridge seemed louder. Every sound, a creak, a step, a breath, carried meaning. One evening, while Daniel showered, she found a small key taped under the kitchen drawer. Her pulse quickened. It was the same shape as the one he always kept on his chain. For a long moment, she just held it, feeling its weight. Then thunder cracked, and from the study something fell, hard enough to shake the picture frames on the wall. Elena's reflection in the glass trembled, split down the middle, and in that fractured image, she knew she had to see what was behind that locked door. The night Elena found the small key, she couldn't sleep. The rain had stopped, but the silence felt wrong, stretched thin, like the house itself was holding its breath. Daniel had fallen asleep on the couch downstairs, his phone clutched loosely in his hand. She watched from the staircase, the faint glow of the TV flickering across his face. His chest rose and fell steadily. For a moment he looked peaceful, almost innocent. She knew better now. Moving slowly, she slipped the phone from his fingers and crept upstairs. The screen was locked, but her heart raced with the familiar pattern of his code. His birthday. It worked. A list of missed calls appeared. Rachel, again and again. She pressed play on the latest voicemail. A woman's voice, soft and trembling, filled the silence. "Daniel, please. You said you'd fix this. I can't keep doing this. She's going to find out." The voice cracked into static, then ended. Elena froze. "She's going to find out." In the documentary's reenactment, the camera pans to a dark hallway. Her silhouette framed by blue light, the phone pressed to her ear. The narrator says quietly, "That was the night Elena stopped wondering and started knowing." She listened to every message. Some were long, some cut short. The woman sounded desperate. Once, she whispered, "He said he'd never hurt me again." Elena's hands shook. She opened the recording app on her phone, pressed record, and replayed each message one by one, evidence, in case he deleted them. When Daniel stirred downstairs, she panicked and hid his phone under the bed. Her own heart sounded louder than footsteps. The next morning, she acted normal. She made him breakfast, smiled when he kissed her cheek, and asked, "Rough night?" He chuckled, oblivious. "Barely slept, you?" "Same. But something changed that day." Elena began hearing things. Whispers in the walls, faint, female, urgent. Sometimes it was her name. Sometimes it was laughter. Sometimes the same voice from the voicemail, repeating softly, "He said he'd never hurt me again." At first, she thought it was her mind cracking under fear. But one night, while cleaning the hallway, she pressed her ear to the wall near Daniel's study, and the whisper grew louder. It wasn't in her head. "Rachel?" She whispered back, silence, then a faint tap, tap, tap. 3 times. When she told Daniel, he laughed. A cruel, dismissive sound that made her stomach twist. "Elena, you've been sleeping too little. You hear things because you want to." "I recorded the calls," she said quietly. His face changed. The charm drained away. "What calls?" "Rachel?" He stepped closer, his voice low. "You've been listening to my private conversations? You lied to me." His hand tightened on her arm. "You're paranoid, Elena. You twist things. You need help." "I'm not crazy." He released her suddenly, eyes sharp. "Then prove it. Stop imagining ghosts." That night, she sat on the floor of her bedroom, replaying the messages again, until they distorted into white noise. Her reflection in the window looked foreign. Maybe he's right. Maybe I'm losing touch. But when she tried to sleep, the whispers returned, closer now, clearer. A woman sobbing softly through the vents. Elena followed the sound to the hallway, barefoot, trembling. The house was dark except for a sliver of light leaking from beneath Daniel's study door. She pressed her ear against it. The whisper stopped. Then came Daniel's voice, low, hushed, urgent. "No one can ever know what happened, Rachel." Elena stumbled back, her pulse hammering. Her breath came in shallow bursts, Downstairs, Daniel's shadow moved past the door, pausing for a moment. As if he sensed her listening, she darted into the bedroom and shut the light. The house went silent again. But through the darkness, a woman's voice, and soft and broken, whispered one last word. Run. The whisper, run, haunted Elena for days. It echoed in her sleep, followed her into the daylight. But every time she thought of leaving, she saw Daniel's face, calm, controlled, and unreadable. He began watching her more closely, asking where she went, checking her phone, hovering when she cooked. The house no longer felt like a home. It was a maze of quiet traps. One morning, after finding new bruises on her wrist, marks she couldn't quite remember getting, she called the number written on a pamphlet she'd hidden in her drawer months ago. Dr. Adrian Cole, trauma therapist. His office was small but warm, lined with books and faint music humming through hidden speakers. She sat in the corner chair, hands folded tightly in her lap. Dr. Cole spoke softly, his tone steady, grounding. Tell me about Daniel. Elena hesitated. He's complicated. He loves me, but sometimes I think he wants me to be someone else. How does he show that love? She laughed weakly. By making me feel small. By making sure I need him. Dr. Cole leaned forward. That's not love, Elena. That's control. In the documentary reenactment, this scene is framed with a slow pan. Sunlight through blinds cutting across Elena's face, half in shadow. The narrator's voice whispers, "The first step out of the cage is realizing it is a cage." Over several sessions, her stories unfolded like fragile glass. Beautiful, dangerous, easily shattered. The bruises. The locked doors. The whispers. Dr. Cole asked to see her journal. He read in silence, occasionally underlining a line or two. When he looked up, his expression had changed. "Elena," he said carefully, "if what you've written is true, you might be in danger. You need to leave before He'd never hurt me," she interrupted quickly, voice trembling. "Not really. He just loses control." Dr. Cole shook his head. "That's what every survivor says right before they stop showing up for therapy." Her eyes filled. "He says he'll kill himself if I leave." The words hung heavy between them. "That's manipulation," he said firmly. "You are not responsible for his threats." But Daniel's voice still lived in her mind, smooth and convincing. "If you walk out that door, I'll end it and it'll be your fault." That night, when she returned home, Daniel was waiting. A bottle of wine on the table, candles lit. That same too-perfect smile. "You've been seeing someone," he said softly. Her blood went cold. "What? You think I wouldn't know?" He held up a small card. "Dr. Adrian Cole, Ph.D. Found this in your purse." Her throat tightened. "Daniel, please, I just needed—" He stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You needed him? Or you needed me to think you're sick?" "I'm not sick," he smiled sadly. "Then stop acting like it." When she tried to speak, he leaned in, whispering, "If you ever tell anyone lies about me again, I'll make sure they never believe you. Not even your therapist." Later, she wrote in her journal, "Dr. Cole says I should leave. Daniel says I'll destroy him if I do." Maybe both are true. The documentary cuts to Dr. Cole's interview years later. She was right on the edge of freedom. But fear is the strongest lock of all. That night, Elena tore the therapist's card into pieces and flushed it down the sink. And somewhere behind the walls, a faint scratching began again, steady, patient, and impossibly close. It began with the hum of the air vent, a low, steady sound Elena had never noticed before. She was changing the bed sheets when the light caught something metallic behind the slats. At first she thought it was a screw, but when she looked closer, her breath hitched. A small round lens stared back at her. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Slowly she reached inside, fingertips brushing cold metal. The camera was wired, neatly, deliberately, not hidden in haste, but installed with precision. She dropped it, trembling. The bedroom suddenly felt smaller, the walls closing in. She glanced around. The dresser, the ceiling corner, the clock. How many more? She tore through the room like a trapped animal, checking behind picture frames, under the lampshade, even inside the smoke detector. Everywhere she looked, she imagined Daniel's calm smile, watching her from somewhere else. When he left for work that evening, She waited 15 minutes before slipping into his office, the one room she was never allowed to enter. The study smelled of cedar and control. Everything was arranged perfectly, books lined by color, papers stacked with surgical neatness. Her hands shook as she sat at his computer. The password came easy, Elena 23. The irony cut deep. The desktop was empty at first, but she knew Daniel better than he realized. She opened the hidden folder in his drive, labeled Projects 2018. Inside were dozens of video files. Each one bore a name. Bedroom, kitchen 2, guest room, basement. Her throat went dry. She clicked play. The first video showed her cooking, reading, sleeping. Every moment of her private life stolen and archived. The footage jumped weeks apart like someone collecting data. Then she saw other faces, women she didn't recognize. Some appeared frightened, glancing toward the camera as if they too had heard that faint hum behind their walls. And then came the final file, footage Vosh 37. The room in the video was unfamiliar, but Daniel was unmistakable. Same posture, same white shirt she'd ironed that morning. His hands were red. He was dragging something heavy wrapped in a tarp. A woman's hand slipped free from beneath it. Elena covered her mouth, choking on air. The narration in the documentary overlays softly here. A detached whisper. The camera that watched her sleep was the same one that captured a nightmare no one was meant to see. Footsteps creaked above her. She froze. Daniel wasn't supposed to be home. She minimized the window, heart racing. The front door closed. His voice echoed down the hall. "Elena, you home?" She forced her voice steady. "Yes, just cleaning." His steps drew closer. She pulled the flash drive from the drawer and slipped it into her pocket. When he entered the study, she was dusting the bookshelf, pretending not to notice the tension tightening the air. He smiled faintly. "You never come in here. I thought I'd surprise you." He studied her face, eyes narrowing. "You look pale. Everything okay?" "Just tired," she whispered. He brushed a thumb over her cheek. "You worry too much, sweetheart." Her stomach churned. The smell of his cologne made her dizzy, that same scent lingering in the videos. When he turned away, she exhaled slowly, her hand gripping the flash drive like a lifeline. That night, she locked herself in the bathroom and plugged the drive into her small laptop. She backed up everything, every horrifying frame. Then she stared at her reflection, whispering, "He's not just watching me. He's done this before." From the documentary's voiceover, Elena's discovery was the turning point, where fear became evidence, and survival turned into strategy. She closed the laptop, heart pounding. Outside, the vent hummed again, that faint, mechanical breath, as if the house itself were alive, listening. Elena hadn't slept. The images from Daniel's hidden files looped endlessly in her mind. Faces she didn't know, voices muffled by static, and that one lifeless hand slipping from the tarp. By morning, something inside her had snapped. The woman who once whispered apologies for things she didn't do was gone. What replaced her was cold, deliberate, and trembling with purpose. She waited until the sun dipped behind the willow trees, until the house turned orange and then gray. Daniel would be home soon. She rehearsed the words in her head. "I know what you did." When his car pulled into the driveway, she felt her body stiffen. Every footstep he took toward the front door sounded heavier than the last. He entered with his usual calm, loosening his tie, smiling faintly. "Dinner smells good." Her voice came out barely steady. "We need to talk." He paused mid-step. "About what?" Elena pointed to the vent in the bedroom doorway. "About the cameras." The smile faltered. "What cameras?" "Don't lie to me." Her voice rose, raw and shaking. "I saw them, Daniel. I saw everything." He said nothing at first, only studying her with a strange curiosity, as if she were a puzzle he'd already solved. Then he chuckled, low and hollow. "You've been snooping again." She stepped closer, clutching her phone. "Who are those women? What did you do to them?" Daniel tilted his head. "You think you're the first person who's ever tried to understand me." Elena's breath hitched. "What does that mean?" His eyes glinted and he leaned against the counter like a lecturer before a class. "You were never my first, Elena. You were just the one who lasted the longest." The air left the room. "What did you do to them?" she whispered. Nothing they didn't want, he said softly. They just stopped playing along. A sick smile stretched across his face. Do you know what happens when people stop believing you? When they think you're crazy. That's the trick, sweetheart. Make them doubt you. Elena's hand shook. I have proof, he laughed. The files? You mean the ones that disappeared this morning? Her stomach dropped. She rushed to the study, flipping open her laptop. The folders is gone. Every single one, Daniel followed slowly, savoring her panic. You really should have known better than to play games in my house. She turned, voice cracking. You killed them, he shrugged. I made mistakes. But you were supposed to fix me. That's what you wanted, isn't it? To save me? Something inside her broke. She grabbed the nearest thing, a glass candle holder, and hurled it at him. It shattered against the wall. He didn't flinch. In one swift motion, he lunged, grabbing her wrist, twisting until she cried out. You see? He hissed. You push, I react. You make me into the monster. Let me go. You don't get to tell me what to do in my own home. His grip tightened. The veins in his arm bulged. Elena's free hand fumbled across the counter until she felt the cold edge of a knife. Without thinking, she swung. The blade caught his arm. He roared, releasing her, blood spilling down his sleeve. For a moment, they both stood frozen, him breathing heavily, her shaking uncontrollably, knife trembling in her grip. He smiled again, that terrible, familiar calm returning. You've finally done it, haven't you? Now they'll really believe you're insane. She backed away, voice trembling. Stay away from me. He stepped forward, his tone almost affectionate. You'll come back to me. They always do. Her eyes darted to the door. Not this time. Elena ran, through the hall, past the photos of their smiling faces toward the back door. He followed, shouting her name. Rain hammered against the glass as thunder cracked overhead. She burst into the yard, slipping on wet grass, knife still in hand. He grabbed her from behind, pulling her down into the mud. You can't leave me, he screamed, slamming her wrist into the ground. I already have, she gasped. Lightning flashed, a blinding white. She twisted free, slicing his arm again. This time he stumbled backward, clutching his wound. Elena! His voice cracked, part rage, part disbelief. She ran, barefoot, through the rain, into the dark street beyond. Inside, the house was chaos. Shattered glass, blood on the tile, the faint hum of a hidden camera still recording. The documentary narrator's voice fades in. By the time police arrived, the storm had passed. But inside the house at Willow Lane, the truth had only begun to surface. And in the final frame before the next chapter, Daniel's bloodied hand reached toward the broken camera lens, the red light still blinking, recording everything. Rain whispered against the shattered windows long after Elena stopped running. Her chest heaved as she stumbled back into the house, soaked, shaking, barefoot. Every sound and every creak, every gust made her flinch. The kitchen was a ruin. Broken glass glittered across the floor. The scent of blood and rainwater mingled in the air. Daniel was nowhere. Her trembling fingers found her phone on the counter. She dialed 911 with hands slick from mud and tears. He's gone, she stammered. My husband. There's blood everywhere. I think I killed him. The dispatcher's voice was calm, rehearsed. Ma'am, stay where you are. Are you hurt? I don't know. Her voice cracked. Please, just send someone. The call ended. The silence afterward was unbearable. Only the hum of the refrigerator broke it. That same mechanical buzz that had haunted her for weeks. She stared at the vent above the sink. The red light was still blinking, watching, recording. Elena sank to the floor, curling her knees to her chest. It's over, she whispered. It has to be over. But deep down, she knew Daniel too well. He was the kind of man who never left quietly. The flashing red and blue lights painted the walls half an hour later. 2 officers entered cautiously, weapons drawn. Elena Ward? She nodded, dazed. He was here. There was so much blood. I thought. Detective Harris, a seasoned investigator with tired eyes, crouched beside her. Where is your husband now? I don't know, she said, voice hollow. He was right there. Then he wasn't. The officers began searching. Their boots echoed through the halls, through the living room, down the corridor, into the study where the computers hummed softly. Sir, one officer called out. You'll want to see this. Harris entered the study. The monitors displayed a frozen image. Elena standing in the kitchen, knife in hand, rain falling outside. A camera feed. The system was still recording. Jesus, he muttered. How many of these are there? The younger officer scanned the room. At least 5 vents. Bedroom, hall, kitchen. He paused, then frowned. There's one more signal, and from downstairs. Elena's head lifted. The basement? Harris turned to her. Is there something down there we should know about? I've never been down there, she whispered. Daniel kept it locked. The detectives exchanged a look. The basement door stood half open, muddy footprints leading to it. Daniel's boots. The stairwell smelled of damp concrete and rust. Harris switched on his flashlight, the beam slicing through the dark. The walls were lined with shelves, tools, wires, cameras. Small screens still flickering faint blue light. At the bottom of the stairs, the blood trail thickened. Careful, Harris said quietly. The light caught something metallic, a large freezer in the corner, half covered by a tarp. A dark puddle spread beneath it. Open it, Harris ordered. The younger detective hesitated. Sir, it's... Now. He pulled the lid. The camera in the documentary cuts here, the screen fading to black before the image appears. A hand, pale, frozen stiff, then another, smaller one beside it. The younger detective stumbled backward, gagging. Oh my God. There's more than one. Harris covered his mouth, turning away. Get CSU down here now. Elena's knees buckled when she saw it. No. Inside the freezer were 3 bodies, 2 women and a man, all wrapped in plastic, all partially preserved. Her voice came out barely human. He told me they left. He said they just left. From the documentary's narration, the house at Willow Lane had been a stage. Every argument, every tear, captured, archived, and hidden above and below the walls. But the truth was never in the footage, was buried beneath it. Detective Harris turned to her, his voice low but steady. Mrs. Ward, we're going to need you to come with us. Elena stared at the open freezer, at the ghosts of Daniel's secrets, and whispered, He's not gone. Not yet. The red camera light blinked once faintly from the corner of the ceiling. Watching. Still recording. The basement became a graveyard of silence. Only the soft hum of the forensic lights filled the air, as investigators worked methodically, cameras flashing, gloves snapping. Elena sat at the top of the stairs, her hands trembling in her lap. The metallic scent of blood still clung to her skin. Detective Harris stood beside the coroner, both men pale beneath the harsh fluorescence. 2 confirmed, Harris said quietly. Female, mid-30s. Both matching missing persons reports from 2018 and 2019. He exhaled, shaking his head. Daniel Ward's ex-girlfriends. The younger officer swore under his breath. And she says she didn't know? Harris looked up the stairs toward Elena, her silhouette faint in the flashlight beam. That's what she says. Elena's world tilted. Their voices felt far away, muffled as if coming from underwater. He told me they left, she kept thinking. He told me they moved on. Her breathing grew shallow. The room spun. Then everything went black. When she opened her eyes again, she was lying on the couch in the living room. A blanket was draped over her, though she didn't remember anyone putting it there. The storm had passed outside, but thunder still grumbled in the distance. Harris sat across from her, notebook open, voice calm but sharp. Mrs. Ward, I know this is difficult, but we need to understand what happened here. You said your husband was controlling, abusive, but these women, these victims, they vanished while you were still married to him. Elena's eyes flickered toward the floor. I didn't know, she whispered. I swear to you I didn't. Did he ever mention them? She hesitated. Sometimes, he'd say they were unstable, that they made things up about him. Did you believe him? Tears welled in her eyes. I had to. He made me believe. Harris leaned forward, his tone softening. Elena, the bodies weren't just in the freezer. There's more. We found disturbed flooring in the master bedroom. We're still digging. Her heart stopped. What do you mean? Digging? He didn't answer right away. The silence said enough. From the documentary's narration, when investigators lifted the old floorboards of the Ward residence, they found not only evidence of murder, but of complicity. Back upstairs, forensics carefully pried open the floor beneath the bed. Dust rose in pale clouds. Beneath the wood lay sealed bags, and not bodies this time, but notebooks, photographs, and hard drives. Sir, "You need to see this," an officer called out. Inside one notebook were Elena's handwriting, pages of entries detailing every fight, every bruise, every time she'd been locked out of the study. But the last entries were different. They weren't just about Daniel. "He says it's safer if I don't ask where he goes. He says we're in this together. If they find out, they'll blame me too." Detective Harris's jaw tightened. "Get these bagged now." He returned to Elena, who sat staring blankly at the wall. "You kept journals, didn't you?" Her eyes darted toward him. "What journals?" "The ones under your floor." A long silence filled the room. Her voice trembled. "I didn't hide them." "He did. Then how do you explain your handwriting?" Elena pressed her hands over her face, shaking. "You don't understand. He made me write things, made me confess to things I didn't do. He said if I didn't, he'd make sure I disappeared too." Harris exchanged a glance with his partner. "She's either a victim," he murmured, "or she's the best liar I've ever met." As they carried the evidence out, Elena watched the boxes disappear one by one. Her memories, her fear, her truth, taken as if they no longer belonged to her. She whispered under her breath, almost to herself, "He told me they left." He promised they left. The camera in the documentary panned slowly across the empty basement. The freezer now open, the floor dug up, the air heavy with ghosts. "In every marriage," the narrator says, "there are things left unsaid." But in this one, the silence was deadly. Upstairs, Elena's phone vibrated on the table. A new message. "Unknown number. You shouldn't have told them." Her blood ran cold. She looked toward the basement door, still ajar, the darkness yawning below, and whispered, "Daniel." The lights flickered once, then twice. The interrogation room was cold, all steel and silence. A single light flickered overhead, casting a pale glow across Elena's pale, sleepless face. She hadn't changed clothes since the night before. The scent of rain and blood still clung to her. Across from her sat Detective Harris, his notepad closed. He didn't need to write anything down. He already knew the words that mattered. Guilt, denial, fear. A camera blinked red in the corner, recording everything. "Elena," Harris began softly, "we've been through this 3 times. Let's start again, and from the moment you found the camera." She exhaled shakily. "I told you. I found it behind the vent. That's when I realized what he'd done." "You mean what you both had done," he corrected. Her eyes darted up. "I didn't do anything. He made me live in that house like a prisoner. You saw the bruises, the journals?" "Yes," Harris said. "We also saw the emails." Her expression froze. "What emails?" He slid a folder across the table. Inside were printed screenshots. Correspondence between Elena and a woman named Rachel Hart. "Come by the house tomorrow." Harris read aloud. "He'll be home, but he's harmless once he knows you're a friend." He looked at her. "That's your message, Elena. Sent 2 days before Rachel vanished." She swallowed hard, color draining from her face. "That's not what it looks like." "Then tell me what it is." "It was Daniel. He told me what to write. He was right there when I sent it. Convenient." Her voice cracked. "You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to help him?" Harris leaned forward, his tone low but precise. "We found another email. You asking Rachel to bring her camera. She trusted you." Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't know she'd die." The silence stretched. From the documentary's narration, the screen cuts to archival interrogation footage. At first, Elena Ward denied all knowledge of her husband's crimes. But as evidence mounted, her version of the truth began to fracture. Elena's breathing quickened. "You don't understand," she said. "He said he'd kill me if I didn't help. He said I'd be next." Harris studied her, weighing every word. "You were afraid, yes. But fear doesn't explain this." He tapped the folder again. "You didn't just write those emails. You replied to her messages. You reassured her. You told her the job offer was real. I didn't know what he was planning." "Then why didn't you stop it?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Because he was watching everything. Every room. Every word. If I disobeyed, he'd punish me." Harris leaned back, folding his arms. "So you helped him lure them in, but you didn't know what he'd do next. Is that it?" "I didn't help him," she said, trembling. "I survived him." The room went still. In the documentary, the reenactment cuts between Elena's face and Daniel's recorded footage. grainy clips of her standing behind him. Silent, expression unreadable. The narrator's voice overlays, "To the police." She was either the perfect victim or the perfect accomplice. But every truth she told was shadowed by what she refused to say. Detective Harris closed the file slowly. "You want to help yourself, Elena? Then stop lying. We found fingerprints, yours and on the freezer handle." Her shoulders slumped. "He made me clean it. He said it was just food." Her voice broke. "I didn't know," he sighed. "Maybe, but juries don't forgive silence." Tears streamed down her face. "You think silence is a choice?" The clock ticked on the wall, each second louder than the last. Finally, Harris stood. "We're done for today." As he opened the door, Elena whispered, "You think he's dead, don't you?" Harris paused. "We haven't found a body." Her lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Then you haven't found the truth." From the documentary's narration, Elena Ward's story fractured under pressure. Every confession blurred with denial. And as investigators soon learned, some lies don't protect. They invite what's coming next. The camera pans down to the evidence folder on the table, one photo partially visible. A time-stamped email sent after Daniel's supposed death from Elena's account. It begins with static, the kind that hums before the truth bleeds through. The screen flickers to life. Black and white interview footage, grainy and slow. The voice of the narrator threading through like smoke. 10 years have passed since the events on Willow Lane. The name Elena Ward still divides audiences. Was she a victim, or was she the architect of something darker? The opening shot pans across the now abandoned house, its windows sealed with boards, its mailbox rusted and empty. Rain streaks down the camera lens. Inside, dust dances through shafts of light, settling on a single cracked photo frame. Elena and Daniel on their wedding day. The documentary's music swells, somber, deliberate. Then cuts abruptly to interview footage. Detective Harris, older now, leans forward in his chair. "You want to believe she didn't know? God, we all did. But the evidence." He sighs, shaking his head. "It's like she kept one foot in the truth and the other in the grave." The scene fades to Elena. Not the woman the world remembers from those interrogation tapes, but the present-day version. Hair shorter, streaked with gray, eyes dull yet alert. She sits in a prison rec room, surrounded by women watching television. The screen in front of her shows herself, the documentary within the documentary. She doesn't look away. Narration overlays. The voice soft, deliberate, haunting. Elena Ward was sentenced to 20 years in a state correctional facility. Her conviction, accessory to manslaughter and obstruction of justice. But questions linger. If Daniel Ward truly died that night, why was an email sent from her account 2 weeks later? Signed only a D. Elena's reflection shimmers faintly against the glass of the TV screen. She tilts her head, a subtle movement, as though listening for something behind the narration. From across the room, another inmate whispers, "That's you, huh? The crazy wife from TV?" Elena doesn't respond. Her fingers trace the edge of her plastic cup. Slow, steady. A guard walks by, muttering, "Guess fame never dies." Still, she says nothing. The film cuts to an archival clip, the interrogation room from years ago. Elena, younger, trembling, whispering, "He made me do it." The footage fades into a montage. The kitchen floor, the blood, the police lights flashing through the night, and over it, the narrator repeats the final line of her original statement. "He told me they left. He told me they'd never come back." The music dips. The screen darkens. Then, a sharp edit home footage appears. A handheld camera, shaky, uncertain. Daniel's voice, faint but distinct. "Smile for me, Lena." Elena, laughing nervously, stares into the lens. "You're always recording," she says. "Someone has to remember us," Daniel replies. The footage freezes on her smile. The narrator's voice lowers. "Someone did." In the prison rec room, the inmates shift uncomfortably. One murmurs, "Creepy as hell." Another laughs under her breath. Elena keeps watching. The final act begins, the part that no one saw coming. The documentary transitions into speculation. The forensic team never recovered Daniel Ward's body. The blood matched his DNA, but trace evidence suggested someone else moved him. Or something did. Cut to a reenactment. shadows moving under the floorboards. Faint scraping sounds, the hum of a refrigerator in the background. The narrator continues. Even now, the house remains sealed. Locals say you can still hear footsteps after midnight. Others claim they see a light in the study window. The music softens again, fading into the documentary's closing narration. Sometimes, the monsters we fear most are the ones we sleep beside. The credits begin to roll. Names, titles, acknowledgments. But the camera lingers one last time on Elena. Her lips move, barely noticeable, forming silent words no one can quite decipher. Some say she whispers his name. Others swear she says, "I told you he'd never leave." The TV screen cuts to black. The rec room empties. The sound of footsteps fades. Elena sits alone, the faint reflection of her own face still hovering on the darkened glass. Her eyes don't blink. Outside, thunder rolls in the distance. Just like the night everything began, a faint flicker of light catches her attention. The television powers back on by itself. The static hum returns, low and insistent. Then, a new frame appears, a man's silhouette, Daniel's voice. Distorted but unmistakable, whispers through the static, "Smile for me." Lena? Her lips curl upward, slowly, almost mechanically, into that same cold smile captured years ago. The camera zooms in, her reflection merging with the ghostly figure on screen. And as the screen fades to black, the narrator's voice returns one last time, quieter now, almost reverent. In every story, there's the truth we tell, and the one that keeps watching us.